So let me ask you, this is a great question about the opposition. We are, as listeners and commentators, not as familiar with Libya as we may be with Egypt or the Levant, for example. And Gaddafi's regime has been called a political shell, which raises questions about, one, the role of the armed forces, two, what does this opposition look like? You're discussing here that there is actually, the opposition isn't centralized in the east, but it's throughout Libya. So can you please speak to those opposition forces as well as the potential role of the armed forces?
Yes, Nora, let me just add one important historic force, and then I'll answer your question. One thing is important, one has to keep in mind, in Libya, contrary to Egypt and the Levant and the other cases of the Maghreb, the countryside, the rural forces dominated the urban elite. And it's no accident that the two leaders of modern post-colonial Libya, King Muhammad Idris al-Sanusi and Muammar Abu Munyar al-Gaddafi, came from the countryside, not from the urban background.
Right.
And that's a very, very important observation about the dynamics of state-society relations in Libya. As far as the opposition, we have really the diverse groups. We have people from within the regime that revolted against Gaddafi and other members, as I wrote about it in my book, The Making of Modern Libya, and also more recently on Forgotten Voices, Agency and Power in Colonial and Post-Colonial Libya. And there is also a royalist opposition, there is a liberal opposition, there is also socialist opposition, a small group of social opposition, but the most organized have been groups that associated with either the Islamist brand and also the old some of the old members of the elite outside. They come from all over Libya, but the most active members are actually from eastern Libya.
And so, what of the relationship to the army and the role that it could play in Libya?
Well, the Libyan army has been dissolved in the last 15 years because Gaddafi, being a military officer who toppled the monarchy, and after a number of coups against him in the mid-70s and also the last one in 1993, he decided to dissolve the army, and now it's really a minor force. The most important armed forces are called the security brigades, and are staffed by his own sons and his own cousins, Gaddafi's sons. So really we have an army that's really not like the case of Tunisia and Egypt, because there you have a professional army. Here the army has been dissolved, and in its place the regime erected security brigades that are linked directly to the security of Gaddafi and the regime itself.
So let me ask you one final question, Professor Ahmida. If you can tell us in the coming days what we should be looking for as moments that would be tipping points or factors or different polities within Libya that would be the tipping force, including external intervention in being able to move from a revolt to actually say that this has been a successful revolution?
I was worried about this scenario, but I predicted it in the sense that I know Libya would be the most brutal stage for confrontation between Libyan society and voices of dissent and democracy and the regime itself, because I know the regime will dig its heels and will not budge in, because the leadership and the groups around him, they think this is really, there is no way out. This is the way they're going to stand it. And also the regime thought that since they really whacked and repressed all kind of opposition in the last 40 years, they could follow the Syrian example or the Saddam Hussein example, they would hit hard Halabja, they would hit hard Hama, and even if thousands are killed, be it because they are self-righteous, and this is important for their survival. I think what we see now is there are three possibilities. One is a protected confrontation. We know the eastern region is off limits the state, and now it's really outside the state's reach. We know that in Tripoli still there is a war going on. It has not been resolved. In Sabha, the supporters of the regime are still there. There could be more defection within the security apparatus. More people are resigning, and that one possibility until Gaddafi and his group will become so isolated and some peaceful negotiation might be done, or he could either commit suicide or be killed. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that his supporters would rally to him, and you would have a civil war, a full-fledged civil war that's going to continue in a very vicious way, and I think it will make maybe Somalia and Iraq, maybe Somalia, and it will be like Iraq, unfortunately. It could be that way. It will be very, very protracted, long civil war. A third possibility is that foreign intervention, and I'm really not fond of it because Libyan people have suffered so much against foreign intervention. They lost. They endured one of the most brutal colonization after Algeria, maybe in the whole region. 500,000 people perished in that colonization, and 60,000 in concentration camps before the Holocaust. So Libyan people are really weary about that. But also one has to be really bring the point that the opposition groups outside Libya who lived for 40 years or so, they're going to try to ride this wave. And I think that will be, they should stay out of it. They really have lived way too long. They don't know what's going on inside the country. The leadership inside the country should really take charge of matters in their own hands. And that's very, very, very important. The other important factor here to consider, I think it's important not to stay vigilant and not to try to brand everybody, because there are a lot of groups who are really did not like the regime. They worked, and there are reformers among the regime. They should be welcomed to join the democratic forces. And also, it's important to try to even console even the Gaddafi said themselves tribe, because that's really important in winning this battle. But also, it's time for all these committees and democratic forces that are fighting the state to see what they want to do after after Gaddafi's regime is toppled, or what kind of demands. I mean, to just say you are anti-Gaddafi or you want the Gaddafi to be toppled, I don't think that's enough. And there has been really a weird silence about that. I encourage them to state what kind of vision, what kind of civic government they want, what kind of republic they want, and just to say, well, against Gaddafi and we'll figure things after that, I think it's a big mistake.
Thank you, Professor Ahmida. We look forward to continuing this discussion with you in the coming days as the circumstances unfold. And on behalf of Jadaliyya, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nora.